One of the things I've learned is that each and every account on Pinterest is so unique. It has its own culture, and it works very differently based on who follows you and what type of content you create. So I don't always believe that there's this blanket strategy that works. I believe there's lots of things that you can try that you'll discover work for you.
That was Kate Ahl, and this is episode 73 of the Chopped Podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Marley of the blog Namely Marley. I am your host, and this is the Chopped Podcast. You know this is the podcast for people just like you, bloggers who love food. My goal is to share with you interviews, thoughts, stories, everything related to food blogging so that we can all learn together about what works with food blogging and maybe even a little bit about what doesn't. Today, I'm talking to Kate Ahl of the site Simple Pen Media. We're talking about Pinterest. Maybe you've heard of it. Look, I know every food blogger knows of the powerful traffic potential that Pinterest has. And if you've been out in Pinterestville, you'll probably have heard a rumor or two about whether or not you should be deleting pins, or whether or not you should be adding text to your pins, or whether or not you should be doing stacked pins. There's so many more rumors that are out there that, we all hear about them. We all wonder, should I be doing that? Rumors can actually take over sometimes, and if you're not careful, you'll be like me and spend entire afternoons pursuing some rumor like that, like I should be deleting old pins that aren't, getting the kind of traffic that I want. And you can spend entire blocks of time, and the question is, was that time well spent? I think that's a great question, don't you? And Kate and I talk about that, just about these rumors, and she provides a formula she shares with her clients for how to handle these kinds of rumors and how you should act on them. And I love that. So if you're interested in optimizing Pinterest, but also just understanding the platform a little better, and maybe even trying to understand some of the changes that are going on with that platform, because there's been a lot of them lately and there's a lot more to come, you are going to love this interview with Kate, and I can't wait to share it with you. But first, a quick word about the Chopped Conference. I know that you are doing your very best to take your food blog to the next level. You're working weekends, you're working nights, you're dreaming about the next recipe you're going to create. You're probably like me and going through the grocery store and looking at the magazines, the food magazines, and looking at the recipes and feeling inspired about ways that you can take your food photography to the next level. Or maybe you're thinking about adding video and how that's going to spruce up your site and increase your traffic. You're doing everything you can, but sometimes I just want to say from personal experience, sometimes it takes a village to grow a blog. There's only so much you can do by yourself, and that's when you need to get with your tribe. You need to learn some new tricks, and you're going to need to make some friends that are going to share those tricks with you, and you need to bond with like-minded people. That's the environment we create each year at Chopped Conference. We want to be your tribe. So go to choppedcon.com today and click on register. We'll be there with open arms to greet you. Okay, let's get right to today's featured interview with Kate Ahl. So put on those earbuds, turn up the volume, and let's talk about all things food blogging and so much more. Hey everyone, I'm so happy to have Kate Ahl of the site Simple Pen Media on the show today. Hey Kate, welcome to the Chopped Podcast.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you.
I'm excited to chat with you too. And I'm really looking forward to talking with you because we're going to be talking about Pinterest, which is something that's of great interest to a lot of food bloggers. But first, I thought it might be helpful for everybody if you could talk a little bit about your site, Simple Pen Media, and maybe a little bit about your background and why you started that site.
Yeah, I started Simple Pen Media in January of 2014 as just a way to help some fellow bloggers with their Pinterest management. That's all I wanted to pursue. I wasn't good at graphics or design. I just wanted to help relieve the burden of scheduling and being strategic. And it exploded into something that I didn't really envision happening. And I just really thought it would be very much a side hustle or side gig, and it has blown into a full big management company with lots of people and clients. And I also, on the side of that, not just management, but I teach bloggers, business users, how to use Pinterest in a way that doesn't exhaust them, or it's really always business building and it's really wise advice. And I really am passionate about bloggers' time and how they utilize it on Pinterest without being, I guess, going down so many rabbit trails. So that's kind of a little bit of the history of, how I got started with Simple Pin and Pinterest. I have been on Pinterest since it started, the invite only time.
Yes,
And
me too.
I didn't really know what to make of it. Like
Yeah.
a friend had made this project she saw on Pinterest, and, everybody was kind of desperately waiting for the invite. They're like, oh, will somebody invite me? And it took this real lag time to be accepted or whatever.
Yes.
And so I just didn't know what to do with it, but I feel like somewhere along the line, I've opened like 7 accounts during that time. But I was helping a friend who was a blogger, and I was a contributor, and I handled all of social media. And so I actually opened up a Pinterest page for her site. And I thought, well, I don't want to log in and log out of all these different Pinterest accounts. So I'll just start using her account personally. And so I really built that up over a couple of years. And then we started pinning some of her content and saw that we were getting traffic. And so the time of me transitioning into starting Simple Pin was married perfectly with the great Facebook algorithm change of 2013, where we saw the free traffic really fall off the map and everybody really go to Pinterest. So they kind of merged together to kind of create this really awesome, perfect Pinterest storm, I guess, for me. And I just really wanted to learn, how do you use it for business? And that's what everybody was really looking for at that time, because everybody had been on it since or not everybody, but a lot of people had been on since the early days. And they were confused and they didn't really know how to do it. And we've seen that with a lot of social platforms too. A lot of users use it, and then later you have to figure out how to use it as a marketer.
I think you're right. In fact, that's how I would say I probably had this deer in the headlight look, because in my mind I was just loving Pinterest because I loved putting things on boards and keeping it organized, and then it's like all of a sudden I realized, oh, people are using this to get traffic to their site. Oh, how cool is that?
And at first you were like, well, who followed me? Why did they follow me? You kind of felt a little bit protective of your board, like, why do you want to know what I'm pinning? And it's definitely changed to where we want followers and we want people to know what we're pinning.
Right, exactly. And I never even actually connected the dots, like you just said, of the changes in the algorithm of Facebook, and actually stumble upon at the same time was a big source of traffic for people. And those two changes happened at the same time. And it's like, you're right. Everybody flooded to Pinterest at that point.
Because you heard these little trickly stories of so-and-so was on in the evening and they pinned something and got like, tons of traffic, and their traffic just spiked through the roof. And it was the time where you watched Google Analytics, and it would be this fun trick to see, how high could I get it to go with one pin or whatever.
Oh, the good old days.
I know.
So you must be one of those people, you kind of like to analyze things and maybe do some A/B testing and things like that.
I do. I really enjoy it. And I enjoy it for 2 reasons. One, I want to challenge myself to see what works. And 2, I want to give people really grounded information that is founded in data. I don't want to say like, hey, this worked for me and I got this result. I've learned over working with, oh my gosh, I don't even know how many accounts. We currently manage over 45, but I have worked with over 300 or so. And one of the things I've learned is that each and every account on Pinterest is so unique. It has its own culture, and it works very differently based on who follows you and what type of content you create. So I don't always believe that there's this blanket strategy that works. I believe there's lots of things that you can try that you'll discover work for you and discover work for your audience. So analytics is a big part of it, because we all want page views, right? Like follower numbers are great, but if those followers aren't clicking through to my site and engaging with me and getting to know me, then they're kind of useless.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, not only do we, want followers, or we want the strategies that work, and we also want to be smart about it and not, like let's say I think we talked about this before. If somebody mentions that deleting pins is a smart strategy, for some reason it worked for them, and then all of a sudden you have all these people running around deleting pins, and do we really need to do
Yes.
that? I mean, that's a great kind of example of that, I think.
It is a really great example. And, with anything out there, with any, I guess, trend to, I don't know if game the system is the proper word, but any type of thing like that, you always have to filter it through. Is this worth my time? Is this business building? Does it move the needle forward for my blog? Is it helping me free up time to create content? Because content is really what is key to your strategy. You have to have content. So
Right.
if deleting pins is going to take you 3 hours and you could have whipped up a really awesome post, well, I don't know. That tells me where the value is.
Yeah, you might really want to spend that time on the content and not so much on the deleting of pins.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
I love that. And I love actually just making sure people have really good data-backed discussions, or information that they can use then to make decisions for themselves. So that's great.
Yeah,
So I've
absolutely.
got some questions for you then. So let's talk about photo quality. Is that important when you're putting a blog post together to have really good quality photos?
It is, absolutely. And to, yeah, for sure, 100%. Because people want to look at beautiful photos.
Yeah.
There's only so many raw chicken breast pictures that people can look at,
Right.
which is very, I get it. It's hard to take good photos. And I'm the first to admit that I'm not a good photographer. And I will never claim to be one, but I can figure out how to hire one because
Right.
I need to outsource that part of my business. I'm not a food blogger, but if I was, that would be the first thing that I would outsource.
Is to make sure that you had good quality photos on your site.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And there's actually, I mean, nowadays there are so many, like there's Canva, there's, in other words, if you're
Yeah.
not, there's obviously the photo that's related to your post, but if you're doing a top 5, I don't know, ways to work with your KitchenAid or whatever, that's something that you can actually, use on Canva or things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the tips that I give people a lot who are not good at taking photos is it's okay to use a stock photography photo every once in a while. Like, there's no shame in that.
Right.
Just because you can't get a great angle of your KitchenAid doesn't mean you're not good at it. Just, it's
Right.
not the point of the post is how beautiful your KitchenAid could look.
Yes, exactly. That's right. But yeah, I think if for authenticity, I think, it's good to have the photo. Like if you're doing an apple pie, it's
Hmm.
good if your post actually has the picture of your apple pie.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
but you're right. If you're talking about the gadgets that you're using in your kitchen or other tips, knife cutting tips or whatever, I mean, I think you're right. There's probably stock photography that can help you along with that. But
Hmm.
what about stacked pins? Because that seems to be an area of controversy in food blogging. So, some people really detest the whole stacked pins things, and others say that it gets them a lot more engagement on Pinterest.
Yeah, so I remember that's been about a year that we've
Yeah.
started really seeing that big push. Well, there's two things to note. One, in the beginning, the reason for creating those longer pins was that it took up more real estate.
Yeah.
And so, especially when you're on mobile, it took up this huge section. Um, and one thing we're always really good at as bloggers is when one thing works, we all kind of
Yes.
replicate it. And so you've seen this
Yes.
huge saturation. I would say that now they've changed the dimensions. It used to be 1 to 3. Oh, I'm going to get it wrong. I'll give you the actual dimensions to put in a post or show notes or transcript, but
Okay.
it's now 1 to 2 to 8. And there's some math in that, and you can Google it to figure out what the best size would be. But Pinterest has said that that's now their ideal size and ratio. And they have said they'll still keep the expand pin, so they'll cut off that really long pin, and it will
Yes.
say expand. Um, so I guess my theory on that is don't do it because everybody else is doing it.
I
Do
love
it
that.
because you want to test it, or do it because you find it beautiful. But if
Right.
you love your photos and you don't want to add text overlay and you don't want to add an extra collage in there, don't do it.
I think,
because
yeah,
you don't have to.
it kind of comes down to the earlier point. Like if you're spending all this time creating stacked pins or text overlay and you could be doing
Yeah.
another post, that might be, a,
Yes.
it comes down to doing what
Yes.
you love to do, I guess is what I think I'm hearing you say.
It is. And one of the things I was talking with someone the other day, we were talking about really knowing and connecting with your audience. And more so than creating a longer pin, it's knowing and connecting with your audience and being
Mm,
helpful and giving them more of what they want. Do they care if it's a stacked pin, or are they really just eager for your recipe because they've gotten to know you? They know what you like and they've engaged with you. That is more important than whether or not your pin is stacked and long and will take up more real estate in the mobile feed.
oh, that's very good. Would you ever consider doing something like an A/B test on that? Like from the same post, you have one that's a stacked pin and one that's not, or one that has text on it and one that doesn't?
Yeah, we I would say we've done a little bit of not super hard fast data with that. But what we have done a test on that we found really interesting is we looked at branded pins versus non-branded. And what I mean by branded is we took someone who they did have a text overlay. They did take the same style of photo, and they did make all of their pins and their photos look very similar. We wanted to see if somebody who went that route, would they get more interaction than somebody who is very different?
Mhm.
Everything looked like a different angle, different shot, different text overlay. And what we found is that those who had very similar looking style and photos and text overlay got more interaction than those who were very inconsistent. And
Interesting.
so, not so much the stacked pins. I mean, we did notice in the beginning that those stacked pins did get more interaction. But now what I think we're finding is more it's the look of it.
I see.
So is can somebody easily recognize your photo just in scrolling through the feed?
I
And
get you.
it takes a while to hone that, but what we've really noticed is that people who have dialed in on that have been successful.
I think that's a very good point. I think actually I can go through Pinterest and I can usually identify there's some people who have a unique style and I can identify who they are. And
Hmm.
what I'm hearing you say is that's a nice selling point on Pinterest.
It is. It is very much a nice selling point, and especially if, as a result of being really consistent in your branding, you start getting consistent readership and engagement because people like that consistency. They like to know when something will happen or how it will look. And as a result, they engage more with it. I know for me, I do, with the people that I interact with, I know, such and such likes smoothie bowls or
Yes.
such and such does really good with noodle bowls. Like there's a value in that consistency and connection that you can build with your audience.
Ah, I love that. That's very good stuff. And I think that's something that people can walk away with if you're, like as we were saying before, maybe they're not embracing the concept of the stacked pins. However, they can embrace the idea of like, ooh, I want to create a certain photography style that really like maybe it's
Hmm.
everything's on dark or everything's on white or everything's backlit or something that is really your style that comes across that way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like my friend Kara Ansis with Fork and Beans, she puts faces on her food, and they're just adorable, and
Oh, I love
it
that.
stands out. It looks very great. So I always know when I'm looking at her photos, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, or Pinterest.
And that's so good. And maybe, the stacked pins worked because somebody who tried it, they recognized their photography and it worked really well. I mean,
Right.
there's so many
Yes.
different elements
Yes.
that go into when you're doing data testing that you have to look at kind of the whole picture.
Right.
People forget to look at how often are they pinning? How
Yeah.
engaged is their audience? How long has their profile been active on Pinterest? There's just so many factors that go into any type of new strategy, quote
Yes.
unquote, that you need to always filter it through those things. Like, is this true for
Yes.
me and for everybody else? Can I apply it? Is it helpful? And is it business building? That's like the three gates that I tell my audience. Like, always run them through everything without running down that trail first because you can't get that time back. And that's
Right.
really, really important.
And what were those three questions again? Is it helpful?
Is it a true? Is it helpful? And is it business building?
Ah, I love those three questions. That's great. Okay, so I was at a conference recently where someone was talking about Pinterest, and she talked about how she shared the same content to the same boards on a regular basis. And I was a little shocked to hear that because I never have done that. I actually was under the impression that once I shared it, like let's say I've got, a board called Be My Cookie, and I created this chocolate chip cookie. Once I shared it to that Be My Cookie board, I would never share it to that board again. Is that not
Yeah.
right?
No, well, I wouldn't say use the term right, but
Okay.
I'll say this is that, we have to remember in merging from being a personal user to a marketer, as a
Yes.
personal user, you would never pin it twice
Right.
because why would you want a duplicate recipe on there?
Yeah.
Because now that we're a marketer, what we have to remember is that if something is, it's well loved, if you will, or gets a lot of click throughs,
Right.
we want to provide that for our audience more often. And you can certainly pin to the same board over and over again as long as you are not spammy. So let's say you pinned your chocolate chip recipe, 2 months ago. You want to pin it again, and you filled up that board with other cookie recipes. Go ahead and pin it again,
Okay.
because Pinterest, in the way that they work, they tend to like things that people already engage with. They like where the activity is happening. So if your chocolate chip cookie tends to get click throughs all the time and it's the most trafficked post on your blog,
Mm-hmm.
keep it in front of your audience and do so in a very creative way and consistent way. You can do that without being spammy. You
I
just
see.
have to also show yourself to pin other things. If you're pinning that cookie recipe 20 times a day over and over, well, that's going to kill it real fast.
Yeah.
But if you're pinning it to a variety of boards twice or three times a week to where it's kind of spread out, that's fine. You can definitely do that. And that's also dependent upon, if you have 25 boards, that might not work out very well. But the important thing is not to pin it and forget it, but to revisit it.
Excellent. It seems like it can get very complicated very quickly to remember what it is that you've pinned already and
Yes.
when. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, that can get complicated.
It can.
Spreadsheets?
And some people use spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I personally don't, but I also, I look in analytics and I go through that list of maybe the top 10 pins that are driving the most traffic. And Tailwind is the
Ah,
scheduling program that I use, and they
me
have
too.
this really fancy reminder that says, "Hey, you pinned this, 12
Yes.
days ago." Okay,
Ah.
that's if Tailwind ever gets rid of that, like I'm stumped because that is such a helpful reminder, especially for people and bloggers
Yeah.
have a ridiculous amount of content that they cycle through.
Right. And see, I get that warning, and I was thinking, oh, I've already pinned it to that board. I better not do that again.
Right. No, no, no. You're okay. It's
Okay.
really, you just really, I like it because if it says you pinned this 4 months ago, I know, okay, I can pin it again.
Great. Okay, good. In fact, it's good to recycle that content and
Yes.
get it out there again. I mean, there have been times that I've gotten. I mean, we'll reshoot an old post and then I have new photos. So then for me, it makes complete sense to be resharing that.
Hmm.
But or sometimes I won't share it to every board that's relevant to it, and then I'll go back and so I feel like I'm keeping it relevant and continue it in the feed that way. But knowing that I can reshare it is huge. That's good.
Yes. Yes. Share away.
Good. Okay, good. I feel like the world is open to me now, Kate.
I love it.
Yeah.
The aha moment.
Is there like Tailwind is a great example. So I'm glad to hear that you say that you use that. So
I do.
is I've heard some people say like you want to use a mix of a scheduling software like Tailwind and also to do some live pinning as well. Do you think there's some truth to that?
Yeah, that's kind of been one of those theories that's been around for quite some time. We schedule most of our content. We do some live pinning. We've tested it where our network will spend maybe a Saturday kind of live pinning,
Yeah.
and we've actually never noticed a huge jump.
Ah.
I'll say on my account, my Simple Pin account, which sometimes I neglect, I will say, when this is really funny to say. So I never live pin, hardly ever. If I do, it's my daughter. She's 10 and she likes cupcakes.
Aw.
And so she will live pin every once in a while, but I've had plenty of pins that I've scheduled to my Simple Pin account
Yeah.
take off, go viral, do really, really well. I've not seen a negative result from scheduling versus live pinning. I can't find a consistent thing that says live pinning always works or scheduling always works. And Pinterest has come out to approve schedulers. So it's really important to note that if they
Right.
if they didn't give it, I don't know the right word, if they didn't approve of them,
Yes.
they wouldn't actually give them an official API
Right.
approval to have apps on their system. They support that, and they recognize that as businesses, which they want on their platform, they have to have the tools to be able to schedule in advance for their audience.
Right.
And so the only caution I would say is that if you're using a scheduler that is not API approved, that could have an effect on your performance. So you do want to take that into consideration. So that's why I always recommend that anyone look at what the approved API schedulers that Pinterest says, yes, we endorse these, we approve their best practices. Always use those so that you're on the safe side.
And I'll put that link on the show notes page for everybody because I do believe Pinterest has only a few that they've done that with.
They have. There's about 6 or 7. I know Buffer, Tailwind, Viral Tag,
Viral Tag, yeah.
Curate, I think is one.
Yeah.
And they're going to approve a few more soon, but for so far, that's all the ones that I've seen them approve.
Yeah, so it's
Ahology. That's another one.
Oh, Ahology. Yes, exactly. Right. So it's good to know which ones those are and then use that for your scheduling. I mean, sometimes I will choose to live pin just because it makes me feel like, I'm out there. I can kind of see what's going on live in the feed right now.
Yeah. No, I definitely think that's a great reason to do it right there.
Yeah, because sometimes it's easy to get out of touch otherwise.
Yes, it is. And it's easy. I think one thing is that Pinterest is always changing their home feed. And you have to remember that the average user still does operate in their home feed. We are a lot of times on desktop, we're not on mobile. So I strongly suggest that everybody look at their pins on mobile because we don't do that very often because as business users, I mean, I'm always on my computer and I'm looking at how my board covers look, but mobile users don't see board covers anymore. So, I mean, it doesn't matter as much.
Oh, you're right. That's true. They don't see the board covers. Actually, I kind of like that. That's nice.
Yeah.
Do you know what the percentages of people that are using Pinterest on mobile versus?
It's 80%. Yeah.
It's so funny because I did spend some time kind of catering my board covers so that they actually had text on them that probably nobody sees that.
I love a good board cover. I'm always on there messing with board covers and making them look all similar. And then I'm like, I'm doing this for 20%. I'm really just doing this for my other business friends who are
for
on
me.
Pinterest. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, what about the golden rule of how much content of your own you should be sharing versus other people? I mean, I would say at the beginning, I was probably sharing 80% of everybody else's content because that's what I was, that was using Pinterest to, pin things that I liked. Mm-hmm. And now I'm probably, it's probably the opposite. No, not the opposite. It's probably like 60-40.
Yeah. So when I was in San Diego in April and I was going to Social Media Marketing World and Pinterest was there. And so I took it as an opportunity to ask all the burning questions. And that was one of them is what's the ratio for business users pinning their content to other people's content?
Yeah.
And I didn't want a number like 20 or 30 or whatever, but they said 1/3 of other people's content to 2/3 of your content.
Okay.
And so I found that kind of interesting because I've always gone with the 50-50 rule.
Yeah.
But I was actually really surprised. 2/3. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So we've kind of tested a little bit to see, if that promotes any extra page views. And I think we're still in the testing phase of that. But I would say for anybody, you're less concerned about the total number and more about just ensuring that your audience can see what you're doing.
Right.
They're not, and whatever you're pinning is quality. If you choose to pin 10 pins a day, then choose to do 7 of yours and 3 of others, or if that feels weird to you, do 5 and 5.
Right.
I think it's knowing your audience is more important than the balance and the ratio. But just know that from Pinterest, they had said 2/3 to 1/3.
Excellent. And what I love about that is, okay, so when the smart feed happened, Pinterest changed for me. And it wasn't so much about loving other people's content, because I feel like my smart feed, I got a lot of repetitive pins. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that I click on a pin that I think I like, and it's something I've already pinned before. So I actually now feel like I go out and get the content that I'm going to share from other people, from other sites, and pin them to Pinterest.
Yeah, that was an interesting question that I asked them too, especially as it related to getting new content into the system, because I had said, like, feels like it takes forever for new stuff to actually take off, or new stuff to be seen in the feed.
True, yeah.
And are you guys working on that? What do you recognize it's a problem? And she said, we do recognize that it is an issue with our algorithm, and we are working on fixing it. So my hope is that as they continue to refine this search, that we'll start to see more relevant content to us. And someone wrote an article, it was actually Tailwind, I think it was Danny who owns Tailwind, had made a really good point about, Google has been around for a while, but it always was not as slick as it is now. We always, at some point we got weird results. It didn't make sense. And I think that's where Pinterest is at. They're still in their refining stage of how they curate their search. And so I just think we're in a big transition for them, and you have to think about whether or not they're going public, and there's just lots of different factors.
Right. I think that's a very good point, and have a little patience with them, right?
Yes, I know it's hard.
Yeah, it is. But at the same time, it's just change, and change happens, and there's ways that work around and work with what you can is the way I look at it.
Yeah, bloggers, we don't like change, right? We're like, no, keep it the way it was.
I had it figured out. Now I don't. So what about group boards? I mean, because that's a tough one too, right? Like in group boards, I kind of have gotten out of a few of them, but I'm in it's probably like 70-30 on my side. I have 30% of my own boards and 70% that are group boards.
Yeah, so that's been an interesting kind of morphosis over the last year. Like we saw group boards be super duper powerful, and then we saw them kind of fall through the floor and just stop driving traffic. And one interesting thing that we had happen was we were on one particular account, we were pinning only to group boards. We weren't really focusing a lot on personal. Yeah. And we saw that account kind of go dormant. It was very interesting. And what that told me was, we have to take group boards with kind of this grain of salt, because we have to remember that we don't own it. And so whatever, somebody could kick me off as a contributor, and there was a big thing that happened where somebody had kicked everybody off, and people were really upset about that, because then all their content was on the board, and this person who owned the board then got all that content. And so what I always tell people is, you want to focus more on your personal boards now instead of group boards. You really want to switch that. Like for you would want to switch it to 70-30. You would want to rely less on group boards and try to really build up the resource you have for your audience in your personal boards.
That makes sense.
Looking at group boards, they just made a change on Pinterest to summed up activity. And so
I noticed
before,
that. Yes.
Yeah, it's really weird. So I don't really understand. I mean, I'm sure I'll understand in a little bit. It's that change thing, right?
Right.
But one of the things that was very interesting is that I used to evaluate group boards by saying, look at the repin number. Are people, because that told us the activity, right?
You're right.
And now we can't
that.
Tell. Yes. So now it's back to, let's strip it all away. Does the board even fit you? Do you have content that fits on there? Do you trust the content that's on there? Would you want your audience seeing it? If not, leave. And then also look at the contributor numbers. If you have 1,500 contributors, it's probably, that feed's going to move super fast. And who knows if someone's a spammer, and, I would not trust it. So
even
I
if
would
it's 200 contributors, I think that's a lot.
Yeah, I do too. I really recommend less than 50. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people are like, what? Less than 50? But I I say join with people you know, join
Yes.
with people you have collaborations with, because that's where the real value is. It's not in just getting more. I want these people. This group board has 100,000 followers. Well, that might
Mm-hmm.
not matter anymore.
Right.
So if it doesn't fit your niche, if it has a lot of contributors, and you don't like the content that's on there, leave or don't join.
So just to clarify for everybody what we're talking about, it used to be like, for example, when I would get an invite to a group board, I would go there and I would kind of peruse the pins on that board, and you could see that there were 1 repins or 2 repins, or, like a lot of the pins that were on that board were not getting, it wasn't getting a lot of activity. It would help. It was one of the deciding factors of whether you would accept that invitation to that group board. But now Pinterest has changed that so that if that pin got any repin from anybody anywhere on Pinterest, that count is now, it's like static across that pin, right? Is that how you would describe
It
that?
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way. It's kind of the sum of all the activity on that particular pin or URL.
Yes.
The thing that we should note is that whenever there's a change, we see a phase of glitches.
Yes.
And so you might upload that pin today and it has 1,000 repins. You might upload it tomorrow and it has 2. So just know that there are inconsistencies happening, and not all the bugs have been worked out.
Of course, it takes some time. Yeah.
It does.
But I think that's just one of the criteria that, used to be really helpful in determining whether to accept a group board invitation. And now you just have to spend a little bit more time, click on the left-hand side where it lists all the contributors. Do you know any of those people? Do you consider them people you'd want to, hang out with and you'd want to work with in a group board? I think that, and also I think you can still look at the pins and see, are these the kind of photos where I want my pins to reside with? And, those kinds of things I think help.
And is it helpful to your audience? If we're going through that whole filter all the time, does my audience want to see this? If I'm just healthy eating and that's all I post about, but it's all decadent desserts, is that helpful to someone who's trying to clean eat? Probably not. So I don't know.
Yes. So just kind of understanding, maybe even create your own criteria and use that as your guide of whether you're going to accept group board invitations. But it sounds like I'm hearing you say you want to spend some time creating your own personal boards and using those. From my understanding is if you're going to have a board, you need to be putting content on it.
Yes, you do. You for sure do. It's why people follow you.
Yeah.
They don't follow you for the group boards. They follow you because it's you, and they connect with you and they want to see what you have. So I want to see if what kind of kitchens you like, or what kind of, drinks you like.
Yes.
I don't necessarily want to see everybody else's stuff, because another tip with a mobile, the most recently pinned to board shows at the top of your profile page.
Okay.
So it'll show pins, like how the pins that you've pinned are first. And then it shows boards as in like the most recently pinned to boards. And group boards can rise to the top. So I noticed that I was checking out somebody's profile and they had a Halloween group board. And for some reason, somebody had pinned to the Halloween board. That was like board 1 or 2 towards the top. It's like, what? We're in July or June.
Yeah, exactly. Not this time of year. Wow, that's interesting. So you have really no control of what shows first on mobile on your feed because it's going to be what's most pinned most recently. And that's why another good reason to be careful about what group board you're in.
Yes.
So, I was just going to tell you kind of my strategy when I start a new board for anybody who's thinking about starting their own personal boards is I want to make sure that I put a lot of content in it at first, because I never want anybody to go to one of my boards and it would be, 1 or 2 pictures.
Yes. Start with 10. At least put 10 in.
Yes, that's good. And I actually started this series. I'll tell you what I'm doing, and you can tell me if this is terrible or not. But I started this series of Be My. So I have Be My Cookie, I have Be My Vegan, I have, Be My Home, all these different, Be My Office. I've got like office furniture that I love, or just, it's like Be My Valentine is what I started with. And then it kind of went on to these different categories. And another thing I love about that is that it starts with a B. So it's really, it seems like they list the boards in alphabetical order. So they're all usually kind of very close to the front.
Nice. I think that's pretty cool. Especially if your people connect with it too. If you find that people are interacting with it, It's great.
Okay, good. God, I'm glad to hear that that's not a terrible process to follow.
No, I think the only thing I caution people against is just making sure the titles aren't too far out there so that, those board titles will come up in search and they will also come up, they'll be indexed by Google. And so you want to
Mm,
be really smart when you choose your keywords for your board title so that people can find you in various different ways. I mean, there have been, I Googled things to do with leftover baby cereal. And I got number one was a Pinterest board that somebody had titled things to do with leftover baby cereal.
wow.
And I was and then I clicked through to that to click through to the pin to click through to the site. And so it's a good way to get traffic.
Interesting. So when you're starting a new board, rather than being craftsy with the title, it's probably good to have a little keyword thought in your mind as well, huh?
Yes, for sure.
Interesting. Wow, there's so much to think about with all of this.
I know. I know.
Okay.
It's not as simple, right?
No, it's not. Okay, so one more question about this. What about boosting a post on Pinterest? Because I hear a lot of fear in the minds of bloggers. I mean, just based on some groups that I'm in, where they're very afraid to do a boosted post because there's this perception that once you do one boosted post, that Pinterest is going to go, oh, well, she paid for it once, so she'll pay for it again. That we're not
Oh,
sending any more
yes.
traffic her way now.
Interesting. Okay, so two things. One, I have a complete guide on my website about promoted
Oh,
pins, and
great.
that's what they're called on Pinterest. They're called promoted pins.
Okay.
Two, I will say that the value for the advertising you get on Pinterest is far and away one of the best I've seen out there. I've tried a Facebook post or a Facebook boost or whatever, or
Yeah.
advertising. I just do not like it. I feel like I'm not getting anything, like 3 clicks, and they're people who are already my followers.
Right.
And then I have never tried Twitter because I don't understand it. But what I love about promoted pins on Pinterest is that you can choose between engagement and traffic. And engagement is an interesting one because you're getting engagement on the platform. That does not include a click. And so if you are, as bloggers, we always want traffic. And
Right.
so I always suggest you choose a traffic campaign. And
Okay.
I interviewed actually someone at Pinterest yesterday about their promoted pin campaigns. And what she had said, interestingly enough, is that when you start to get a lot of activity on one of your promoted pins, it kind of has a residual effect. Pinterest will show more of it because
Interesting.
you've shown that people are getting interaction, and you can even drop your budget mid campaign and Pinterest will continue to show it to more people. So I've never seen any disadvantage to using promoted pins. They're not out there to, I guess, get you to pay more. They
Yes.
really want to be one of the best advertising platforms out there for your dollar and for your business. And so I've never seen a negative effect of a promoted pin ever. If anything, I've seen great residual effect, up to a promoted pin shelf life, they say, is like 90 days. And
Wow.
so I could promote something right now and then it
Yes.
continues to snowball from there. And it could end up driving you traffic for the next year. And you can set your budget very low. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You just have to understand how to do it well so that you're competing in the right space. And I mean, I can't say enough about how well Pinterest has organized their advertising platform. I go into Facebook and I am instantly confused and lost. I go into Pinterest and it's very much like one,
Click
two,
here. Click
three.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Which that's what I need. I don't need, you can still target. You target with keywords on
Hmm.
Pinterest and you can target with demographics and price, but it's just not as confusing as I feel like the other social platforms are. So I would say use it. Definitely test out a promoted pin. Test with a small budget. See
Right.
what it does. But don't be afraid of it because you think you're going to get demoted, if you
Right.
will.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is that if you have a pen that's doing really well, it's demonstrated that it's doing very well organically. So it probably would do very well as a
Yes.
boosted or promoted pen. And then Pinterest will notice that. And so that may be a good place to start, huh?
Very good. I always suggest really starting with that pin that you know does well organically. And they would say that too, in talking
Yeah.
with them yesterday. that's a good place to start. It's a
Yeah.
great place to test it out because there's activity there and you want to drive more traffic to it.
Right.
And for anybody listening too, promote a pin with a goal. Is your goal, what are you going to do with the traffic? Sure, traffic is awesome, but if
Yes.
they come to your site and don't do anything, then you've wasted your dollars. So do you want them to buy something? Do you want them to sign up for your email list? And if you do want them to sign up for your email list, you can add a conversion pixel that Pinterest has to your site so you can know if it's actually working and if people are converting.
Oh, that's great. It's always good to have that data to show, like you say, give yourself some facts to know if it's working or not.
Yes.
Another thing I love about this is that, I think it's oftentimes I hear this out, if I'm listening to social media podcasts or whatever, and they'll talk about how you really should focus on your email list because you own your email list versus paying for
Yes.
advertising. And I've come to this realization that you also pay for owning your email list because once you get over a certain number of followers, you have to pay so much, let's say it's even just $30 a month. And I have to
Yes.
continually be coming up with content for that. Once you get up to that, you're thinking, well, I need to be doing something with this. And part of me wonders, like, what if, $30 a month on a boosted post with Pinterest might be money just as well spent?
Yeah, that's a really good, I can appreciate that question because I'm a big email list fan,
Yes.
but it is work.
Yes.
It's another place of creating content. And I know that, for me, it's a place that I talk to my audience. I engage with them in a very unique way. But if you don't have the bandwidth to do that, and that's just going to stretch you even further, you might choose not to, really focus on crafting this perfect email list. And just do a promoted post where maybe that people buy this particular product over and over and you make more money. And and that's okay. Great. I'm all for, increasing your revenue. So that is, as I talked with a friend recently who is really struggling with her email list and feeling really discouraged, and she's trying so many things. I think it's important for us to remember that it's not about your numbers. It's not about how big that can get. But again, it's back to that place of how do I be helpful with the 100 people who are on my list?
Right.
And sure, everybody's like, you can grow your email list overnight to like 10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
But those 100 people have said, I want to interact with you. I want to hear what you have to say. And I like what you do. Give them more of that.
Right.
Hang out with them. Enjoy that.
Yes.
And if that means that you stay at 100 for 5 years, great. Like it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're getting that engagement and with the people. I don't know. I feel frustrated with those messages that I kind of keep hearing over and over.
Yes.
That get you sucked into bigger is better. And I don't always think that it is.
I completely agree. And I think there's something to be said for the fact that your list is, at least when it's 100, it's free. And maybe you could do some things to prepare yourself for when it's going to be $30 to $60 a month for your list,
Yeah. And what if you had like 100 or even 90, like 90 out of 100 engaged buyers?
Oh, yes.
Rather than 90 out of 2,000 engaged buyers. But you're paying for the 2,000.
Right. Exactly. I think that's such a great question. These are really great tips. Do you have anything else that you would, want to share about Pinterest? Or, I mean, you probably could talk about Pinterest all day long, so that's probably not a fair question.
No, I know. And I think I just had 2 consults today too. So I've been going this Pinterest circle, but I think I would just say, I think my most important thing that I always hit home to people is what we talked about in the beginning. Do not get distracted by rabbit trails that are not business building, that are not true, and that are not helpful. It is really, really, I feel passionate about that. And so I'm really careful with anything I share because I want the people who listen to me or the people who are my clients to be successful because they are great content creators, not because they're crafty at gaming the system. Because the system will always change, right?
Right.
But you, as a content creator, you're like, it's you, you'll be you. And so that's the kind of algorithm proof, right? Our content is. So I would say if anybody is just so frustrated with Pinterest, they don't know what to do next, just take a deep breath and just ride the wave for a couple months. Just, this is not, I don't know when this podcast will go live, but, in June is really not high traffic time. It is the time where, the past 3 years that I've been doing this, people are like, my traffic's in the tank.
Yes.
It's okay. We need times of respite. We need times to go back through our old content and update it. Take advantage of that, because guess what? August is coming. And once we hit August, that's like the marathon for food bloggers. That's when you get big brands. That's when you're getting all your posts, you're pushing all this stuff out, and come, December 25th, you're exhausted. So enjoy it, and use it for what it is.
Use it as a time to fill up the well and,
Yes, exactly. Do a few Christmas posts, right? Without having to feel the pressure.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great idea. Okay, so at the end of the interview, I always like to ask a few fun, quick questions. So what's one food item you can't live without?
Oh, man. It's changed lately. One food of I feel like carbs these days. I just got through with like a month of sickness, so any bread or anything like that is the only thing that tastes good these days. Toast is
toast. Good. A good piece
or
of
tacos.
Toast.
Actually, we have a taco stand down the street, and I will have to say we've gone there 2 nights in a row because they have $1.25 carnitas tacos that are the best you've ever had. And so maybe tacos.
Tacos are not only on Tuesdays anymore, huh?
I know, right?
I love it. Tacos, that's a great answer. Very original and perfect for this time of year.
Yes.
I have a thing for nachos right now. I've been, sharing them on Snapchat like crazy. I just love, I love nachos.
I should try those too.
Yeah. Okay, what's your favorite app on your phone?
I would have to say, there's favorite and there's most used. Most used right now is Facebook, but I would say my favorite is, I use Instagram a lot. I don't use it, but I like to lurk. I'm a lurker.
And look at all the pretty pictures.
Yeah, it's good for inspiration and kind of seeing what people are doing. So maybe that's my most indulgent app. Let's call it that.
I like that. What's your most indulgent? I mean, you have to change that question now based on you.
Because we all have the indulgent apps that we go to that aren't really necessary. We could get rid of them, but we don't.
But it's too fun to go to them, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Guilty pleasure kind of things. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any time for TV at all? And if you do, what's your favorite show?
I do only once a week because I have 4 children.
Oh my gosh.
I like The Americans. I'm totally sucked into that. And I blame my friend who loves watching TV because she tells me about series and then I get sucked in. So the season finale is next week. And after that, I won't watch TV at all.
I don't even know what that show is. What is that?
It is this really fascinating spy show from it's set in the 80s. So it's a lot of the Russian-American conflict. And so I really like that kind of stuff. I hate reality TV. So if I'm not watching that, I'm watching the news or something boring to kind of catch up on my week. What have I missed? Which really isn't anything when you sit down to watch it. So.
Cool. I'll have to check that one out. It sounds very, that's a time frame. And I think we just watched a movie recently about that whole Cold War thing. And that's an interesting thing. Yeah.
If you have Amazon Prime, I think the first 3 seasons are on there. So they're just finishing the 4th. So you could definitely binge watch it.
Okay, cool. I'll have to check that out. I mean, I actually did watch a series on Amazon Prime and I think it was The Parent, something about Parent. Mm-hmm. I can't think. I didn't really like it very much. So hopefully this one's better. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might like it. You'll get sucked into it. I will say the caveat is there is some scantily clad women. So you just have to be prepared. I do not like, the sex scenes or anything like that. So I have to fast forward because it just can't do it.
Yeah. That's what I think I remembered about Amazon Prime, to be completely honest, is that I don't want to come across like a prude, but at the same time, it was just a little bit over the top, I felt like.
Yes. I will say that too. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't got time for it. So I just fast forward really quick through it. I'm like, give me the content. I don't need any of this other stuff.
I know. I just want the story. I don't really need all those other things anyway.
Yes. Yeah. So just be warned. It is a little bit sketchy in that area. So I've had to move past it.
Okay, got you. Good to be forewarned about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so how can people find you online?
Well, I am simplepinmedia.com, and Simple Pin Media is my handle everywhere. Besides Instagram, I'm just Kate all over there, but I don't really post anything interesting on that platform. But yeah, and I have a private Facebook group. It's free that I run for bloggers. It's the Simple Pin Pinterest strategy group, which is kind of long, but there's a lot of really great, helpful bloggers in there who we share information, we share monthly analytics reports. And so if you're really somebody who just wants to dive in and ask questions, get information, then you can find me there and sign up for my email. I send out Wednesday emails, or I love to just chat with people about what's happening on Pinterest. So
Oh, that's great.
that's
I'm
where you
going
can
to
find me.
definitely go sign up for your email because I think getting some Pinterest inspiration on a regular basis would be good.
Yeah, and it's not huge jam packed because I don't know people don't have time for that all the time. So I try to make it pretty clear, concise, and I'm testing out Facebook Live on my Facebook page
Good.
to see if I like it. I'm not sure yet because who knows? But anyway, you can find me there every Monday morning.
Thanks so much to Kate Ahl for being my guest on today's episode of the Chopped Podcast. Be sure to go to choppedpodcast.com to buy your ticket to the conference, learn more about today's show, and you can even sign up for our newsletter to get the latest on all things food blogging. Tune in next week as I talk with Carrie Ann Cheney of the site Oh Sweet Basil about her unique approach to working with brands. Just a hint, Carrie Ann wants you to know your value when you're negotiating your sponsored post fees. You are going to love it. It's great stuff, and I can't wait to share it with you. I hope you're loving the Chopped Podcast. You can show your support for the show by leaving a review on iTunes or Stitcher, sharing about the show on social media, or even leaving a link on your own blog or podcast. And I love getting your emails too. It all means so much. I hope you inspire me, and I hope today's show is helpful and inspirational to the work that you're doing every day. Thanks for listening and have a great week.